Over the last month, we've had lots of Lorcana competitive tournaments where we've seen some new decks emerge and we've seen some old favourites keep their spot at the top of the tier list. These are the top 10 meta decks for Lorcana. In number 10 we have Sapphire Tempo. Now this deck originated as an aggro deck, originally using Maleficent as kind of like a bigger, beefier Cusco, and then when you combine it with the Cusco you just have lots of 5-cost threats basically, but we've seen it slowly adapt into this ramp playstyle where we go back to using the Detective Mickey to ramp up into really big cards like John Silver and Hades. These cards can be really annoying and close out some games really quickly. Sapphire kind of has the same kind of tools as Ruby does, but in my opinion might be slightly better if you're going for this style of deck, just because you have Hades, which is like a cheaper Maleficent, and then you have Let It Go, which is like an inkable Dragonfire, and you also have access to some more aggressive tools such as Eye of the Fates, which is a really slept on card. Even near the end of set 1 we've still not seen this card's full potential. I think adding an extra lore onto any character every single turn just makes it really, really strong, right? Because you have like this Donald Duck, which we've seen pop up with a ward keyword. You can give it like quests for free basically, and then it just becomes in the same kind of tier and category as the Cusco and the Maleficent. And then, like I say, we go to Hades just to remove big threats later on in the game. And we're using the Detective Mickey Mouse, which means you can start spamming these 5 costs by turn 4, which is really, really strong. And you still have the really strong starts with Flounders and Flynn and Phil. And then we've got Jasper for the anti-aggro matchup. And overall, this is a really solid deck. And just one of those ink combinations that I wouldn't have really expected to do well at the start of the set. So at number 9 we have Emerald Midrange. Now I'm just going to say straight up, this deck will probably be insanely good in set 2 because Emerald and Steel get some insane tools. So keep an eye on this one for set 2, but right now I've got it at number 9, and that's just because we have this kind of aggressive control mix playstyle where against any aggro decks you can just play the Steel control and just like use cards like Tinkerbell and Smash to clear the opponent's side of the board and just create a really solid board where the opponent can't do anything, and then you just slowly win the game that way. And then against control decks you can just pace them really quickly by playing big cards and getting to 20 before they can even do anything. And then also against control, if you fail to reach 20 before like turn 7, you can then just go into this mill game plan with Lady Tremaine, Do It Again, and Whole New World. So you have so many like different styles of play with this deck. It's very, very difficult to pull off, but just knowing the matchups and how they work is essential to success with this deck, because like I say, you can either play mill, aggro, or mid-range. It's just all in one deck, so it might be a bit inconsistent, especially because you're playing a few uninkable cards, but other than that, I think just knowing when to go into Tinkerbell and control the board, or knowing when to just vomit your whole hand and go for like Cusco's Mad Hatters, knowing when to hold Beast to destroy magic mirrors, and just knowing when to go for the mill game plan with Lady Tremaine, you'll have great success with this deck. And like I say, going into set 2, I think this will be one of the decks to beat, so maybe learning some of these combos now might be worth it, or it might just be worth waiting until set 2, but right now I've got it at number 9. At number 8, I've got one of the highest potential decks which I don't think we've seen truly thrive, and that's Steel Control. Now Steel Control originally created itself as a counter to Ruby Amethyst because you have access to Beast and you also have access to Magic Mirror, whereas normally when you play Steel against Ruby Amethyst you just want to destroy the Magic Mirror and outvalue them, but with this kind of deck you have the Magic Mirror and the Beast, but your opponent won't have Beast if they're playing Ruby Amethyst, so you kind of play the same game plan as them. I think it kind of falls off though because you just don't have Be Prepared, and Grab Your Sword sometimes just isn't enough for a full board clear, but you can play more of like a mid-range style and then go into Elsa's and kind of like beat the opponent down from there. But I think this deck just kind of missed something along the way. It's still a very strong deck, but I think it just missing a few key cards, and I think it just missed the players kind of like trying to innovate with the deck. But right now I've got it at number 8. I think it's a really solid deck, but I don't think it is anything compared to Ruby Amethyst, if I'm being honest, but it's definitely worth trying out, and it definitely is a lot harder to play than Ruby Amethyst, I think. But yeah, give it a go. You know, you've still got a couple weeks left until set 2, and maybe we can see this deck win a tournament on one of the last days of this set. Number 7, I've got one of the newer decks. This deck was popularized by Steadfast and Ducky. This is Ruby Midrange. I think you're basically just cashing in on how good Rapunzel and Surfer Stitch are at drawing cards. So you have this like kind of like aggressive deck where you're questing with like LeFou pretty early, and then you can just kind of control the opponent's hand with You Have Forgotten Me, and then just draw your own cards with Rapunzel, Surfer Stitch. You have the kind of ramp that you have with Lantern, and you still have like those late game Ruby control tools with Maleficent, Be Prepared, and Dragonfire. Overall, you're just playing a lot of like really good cards, and I think that's just the main thing of the deck, right? Every card in this deck is just good. So you can just use like Be Our Guest to search for more cards. It's essentially a free draw. Rapunzel is insane. I think we all know this by now. Like Rapunzel can just carry this whole deck, right? Because you're playing such strong cards. Like even the 4-cost Ariel is quite strong for stats. You see Hades Loop itself. Everything's just got really good stats. You see the 6-cost Stitch, which has some really good stats. And you see Evasive Tigers. And then Maleficent can clear board for you, and then Surface Stitch has 8 health, so it's going to stick quite a lot. Rapunzel is just drawing you so many cards that your hand is just going to be so fat, and then you're discarding your opponent's cards with You've Forgotten Me. Overall, I think this is just Amber being really strong, and then Ruby just complementing it quite well. I think there are better Amber decks, and I think there are better Ruby decks, but overall, this is a really solid deck. It's very interesting again to see this ink combination that we didn't originally see at the start of the set kind of taking off later on. But overall, really fun deck, and if you're a bit bored of the current meta, definitely give this one a go. So at number 6, we've got Sapphire Ramp, another deck that I think is really good, but we've just not seen it played too much. It's a ramp deck basically. You just want to use cards like Detective Mickey and Grammar, you know, the ramp tools. And then you can go into your big Elsa to stun the opponent, you can go into your Hades to remove the opponent's threats, you have the Magic Mirror for card draw, and then you have Let It Go to remove any cards that your opponent might play. And then for the super late game, you have the Belle Strange Bit Special, who's going to start questing for 5, and that's kind of once you've already got full control of the board, so she's kind of just like one of those late game, I've already won, I'm just going to do it quicker cards. But overall, you know, we see just the card draw of Amethyst with Maleficent Friends as well. And yeah, just overall, you're just ramping up to big cards and you're just playing, once again, just kind of 60 really good cards. So at number 5, we've got a classic Lemon and Lime aggro deck. You know, you can just very consistently play all your cheap units and quest for a lot. And then on the off chance that you find the just in time on turn 3, you can just kind of almost guarantee a win by playing just in time into like a free quest. You can also go for the turn 4 Rockstar Stitch and then start vomiting your hand and just drawing a load more cards. Once again, we see Rapunzel being really strong. It's kind of like your only card draw. Obviously you have the Rockstar Stitch, but that's more of like a, I'm not going to say a combo, but that's more of like it's an unreliable card draw, whereas Rapunzel is always super reliable. You have Mother Knows Best just for like a tempo bounce tool, and overall we're just seeing like a very aggressive style of deck which you can high roll with and get a lot of free wins. But other than that, if you haven't tried this deck out already, definitely do it. It's a lot of fun and it's quite easy to pilot as well. Number 4, we have one of my favourite decks. This is Amber Midrange. Once again, we're just kind of seeing good cards. We're seeing a lot of Sapphire as well, and it's interesting to see like what inks have kind of taken over the meta, because I think originally we all thought Amethyst was going to be like the ink to beat, and now we see that we've had it for quite some time. We're seeing that Amber might be the best, but we're also seeing Sapphire kind of sneakily be there as well. I don't think people are really talking about Sapphire, but Sapphire shows up quite a lot. But the way you play this deck is you just are playing, once again, strong cards that complement each other very well. We're seeing the card draw of Rapunzel and Surface Stitch once again. You have Forgotten Me to discard cards from your opponent's hands just to keep the card advantage up. We see Rockstar Stitch. Rockstar Stitch in this deck is only a 2 of, I think, because you're only seeing like the Stitches and the Grammatallas. You're not really going to get it off much, but it's more just for that like early shift into the Rockstar. It's just really strong. We're also seeing Maximus with the Bodyguard as well, which is quite solid. Just really good stats on a Bodyguard unit. It's just super healthy for the deck. As soon as you can play it down, you know, you're protecting your Rapunzels, which are questing for 2. You can even protect like all your 1 costs and stuff like that. It just protects your board basically. So heading into the top 3 now, we've got pure aggro. Now this is Emerald Amethyst. Basically again, you're just going to play a load of cheap units that quest for a lot, and you're going to play like cards like Rafiki that just have a lot of value to them, Jasper for the anti-aggro, and again just Emerald doing Emerald things of questing for a lot, but this time you complement it with the card draw of the Maleficent. Nothing we haven't seen already before. You can really pair Emerald with anything. I think just the shell of the Emerald aggro is so good. And I think it works well with Amethyst just because Amethyst has that card draw. Whereas when you're playing it with Amber, Amber has like almost too many good cards, right? So you're trying to fit in a lot. So you're trying to fit in just in times, Rockstar Stitches, Rapunzels. Whereas Amethyst has got some very like honest cards, right? So you just have Maleficent, Friends on the Other Side, Rafiki, and then you just kind of fill the deck out from there. So this is mainly an Emerald deck more than anything, but yeah, just Emerald with card draw aggro, very strong, get your wins very quickly, and quite a cheap budget deck as well, since you only run the one legendary of John Silver. So at number 2, we've got Ruby Amethyst. This is the classic. If you were playing at the start, you would have known this deck was basically considered tier 0 for the longest time. We saw the adaptation of Mickey Mouse with brooms, and we created broom loops, which basically means you can just loop Aladdin and Elsa turn after turn to stun your opponent and just win from there. That was mainly for the mirror match. But other than that, your game plan is quite simple, right? You just play your 2 drops and your 3 drops to kind of just slow the opponent down, and then you just kind of go into Magic Mirror, stop the opponent from doing anything, draw a load of cards, and then just stun the opponent with Elsa, Maleficence, Be Prepared. And then if you get close to decking out, you can just start using your Mickey Mouse Magic Broom combos from there. And yeah, it's a really solid deck, one that initially people thought was going to be the best deck for the whole set, but thankfully we kind of adapted and figured out what decks were good against it, and just kind of figured out extra decks as well. So this was like the first deck to be figured out. We saw 67 card variants, which winning tournaments, which I think they still are, 64 card versions. This is a 60 card version. But yeah, we saw a lot of adaptation with this deck, and it's still very, very solid. So at number 1, I've got Songs Midrange. I've also got a different songs list here as well up next. But the midrange version is basically just, you just want to play cards like Beast and Cerberus, just as big stats. And again, you want to just use Rapunzel and Stitch to draw cards. You have Forgotten Me to discard cards from the opponent's hand. And then this time you have cards like the Ariel, which has Sing of 5, which can dig for a song. Most of the time you can just ink that card, or you can play it. So for I guess you can dig deeper for any character cards that you want. Whereas you can use Hakuna Matata to heal your whole board. Or you can just use Grab Your Sword for the tempo. It's a very tempo based deck. I think going like Hook, Eric into Tinkerbell into Shift Tinkerbell basically means you're going to have like the board control from turn 4. And then if you're playing against control, you can just Beast the Magic Mirror, which is like something I really need to drill into people. If you save Beast for Magic Mirror, you will basically have a really good time in that matchup, and then you just win through card advantage with Rapunzels and stuff like that, and you just slowly quest your way up to 20 while your opponent just sits there with no cards in hand. And then against aggro, you can just use You Have Forgotten Me, and then they'll just be on top deck mode since from turn 4 onwards, right? They'll be on top deck mode from turn 4 onwards. But then we've also got the Songs Aggro version. Now this is a version that I probably like a little bit more, just because it's a bit more fun, right? So you have access to Lilo Simba combo this time around. You're still doing the same thing of drawing a song with Ariel for the tempo. You still have the same early game tempo, apart from this time you're using lanterns, and then you can hold Rockstar Stitch, and then when your opponent kind of has no cards left in hand, or they've kind of like used free Be Prepared, you just play a Rockstar Stitch, sing Whole New World the next turn, and then just vomit your whole deck onto the board, right? Because you're drawing cards, playing cards, you have the lanterns to make them cheaper. And then you just have Leaf 1 next turn. It's very difficult for the opponent to deal with, and it's a really, really fun style of play. But I think either Songs Aggro or Songs Midrange, just depending on what one you really want to play on the day, it's probably the best deck in the game right now. This will probably be the last top 10 until set 2. Got a lot of set 2 content coming, so if you're excited for set 2, make sure to subscribe. There'll be lots of gameplay coming early. But other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.